The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light across the treetops. A man stood poised on a thick branch, his eyes sharp and resolute. He stated that the time had come. He reflected aloud that, though his clan had been annihilated by the demonic sect, they endured only to deliver vengeance. Without another word, he leapt over the compound wall below. Flames flickered beyond it. A sentry stood unaware. From the darkness, shadowy hands slithered forward, unsettling the man enough to twist his neck like a startled bystander catching a glimpse of someone's mother on the street. He muttered that the sentry's disappearance wouldn't go unnoticed for long, but promised to finish everything before that moment arrived. Blood was spilled quickly. Somewhere inside, an old man noted aloud that things had grown awfully noisy outside. The old man's eyes glinted, a deep, unnatural red. The attacker remarked that it was typical of him to meditate calmly while his subordinates were butchered. He accused him of being as heartless as always. The old man calmly responded that such a charge suited the man before him better, asking if he truly thought a climber worried about the ants crushed beneath his feet. He explained that no, a man with vision would have eyes only for the summit. That, he said, is how one reaches the peak of martial mastery. The man scoffed, calling it nonsense. He finally gave his name, Kong Wunchan. With fury in his voice, Wunchan declared that he would kill the old man with his bare hands. That's when the old man revealed himself to be none other than the heavenly demon. Wunchan charged forward, summoning a glowing blue aura into his hand. Sparks danced and cracked. This was the heavenly lightning fist. He hurled the technique at the heavenly demon's face. The old man chuckled, dismissing it as weak. He extended his own hand, conjuring a surge of blood-red energy known as the heavenly blood-tide art. He told Wunchan to watch and learn. A searing energy beam erupted from the old man's palm, meeting Wunchan's attack in midair. The clash resembled something out of Dragon Ball Z, but it was clear who had the upper hand. The beam overpowered Wunchan's lightning, striking his face and cutting him. The younger man gasped, recognizing it as sword ki. The heavenly demon declared that today, Wunchan would join his father in death. But Wunchan refused. He summoned another power, and the heavenly demon's brow furrowed in surprise. Wunchan's hand shifted into a palm strike. The heavenly divine palm. And it collided with the energy beam, shattering it. The old man reeled, stunned that his steel tempering technique had lost to a mere hand strike. Wunchan's fist slammed into the heavenly demon's chest, unleashing lightning through his body and sending him hurtling into a stone wall. Gasping, Wunchan spat that he should keep his filthy mouth away from his father's name. He reminded him of the countless sins he had committed, stating this pain was the fury of every soul he had wronged. The heavenly demon responded bitterly, saying he should have destroyed the Cloud Dragon sect completely. He admitted he didn't know what insight Wunchan had gained, but he was impressed nonetheless. Breaking through the heavenly demon blood surge art was no small feat. With no other option, he reached into his robes and pulled out a gourd. Wunchan questioned if it was an elixir. As the heavenly demon began drinking, Wunchan warned that consuming that much would trigger demonic ki deviation. The gourd shattered in a burst of violet energy as the heavenly demon's power skyrocketed. The pressure distorted his face, veins bulging as a monstrous roar exploded from his mouth. The shockwave blasted out, forcing Wunchan to shield himself. Still reeling, Wunchan looked up just in time to hear the heavenly demon's voice behind him. He turned, eyes wide, but the attack had already been launched. The heavenly demon declared that it was time for Wunchan to vanish. But then, a barrier shimmered into existence around him. Someone had cast a protective shield at the last moment. Wunchan stared, dumbfounded, as a man stepped forward, apologizing for being late and admitting he had been lazing around. Wunchan identified him as the Great Mage. The man rolled his eyes, saying he hated that nickname, and asked if this was the so-called nemesis. Wunchan confirmed it, explaining that this was the man who claimed to hail from another world. Without him, he would have died. Then the scene snapped. A man screamed, "Wait!" His voice was sharp, annoyed. He exclaimed that he thought this was a standard Muram story and wondered why some random high-level mage from another world had appeared. With a sigh, he admitted that the story was fun until now, but this twist killed the mood. He accused the author of being on fentanyl, questioning how another world suddenly came into play. The man was introduced. Jin Seowoon, 23 years old. His phone buzzed. We learned that he was discharged from military service 6 months ago and was preparing to go back to college. A friend messaged him, asking if he wanted to grind some ranked matches. Seowoon muttered that his friend must have no one else to play with. He recalled that, like many soldiers nearing discharge, he once had a solid plan. He wanted to earn certifications and catch up on studies. But society had too many distractions. Now, he still had some money left but considered getting a part-time job. As a Muram novel fanatic, he often imagined himself as a protagonist. He walked into a PC cafe. The cashier greeted him by name, asking if he was heading to Loyal Ground again. Seowoon nodded and paid for 10 hours. He'd sunk countless hours into the game, and after discharge, became a top 10 ranked player in 3 months. He logged onto Discord, telling his friend to wait in the lobby. Tournaments held at internet cafes had even earned him some cash. The game was simple. 100 players parachuted onto a map, scavenged weapons, and fought until one remained. It was PUBG. Seowoon called out coordinates, instructing his friend to check 120. He fired 2 headshots. Both enemies dropped. His friend shouted that only 2 players were left. Seowoon told him to quiet down, saying that he'd already died once and should just trust him. They needed to survive and find the safe zone. His friend agreed, saying he believed in him. As the circle closed, other players approached a building. They noticed loot on the floor and assumed it was safe, an obvious trap. One entered and was gunned down instantly. His teammate, hearing the shots, panicked and ran, only to be shot in the back of the head. Victory, chicken dinner. Seowoon sighed as his friend thanked him for the carry. He told him to queue again and mumbled that he'd really start studying tomorrow. Famous last words. A message came through. His mother had sent money for his academy fees, along with a note urging him to eat well. She apologized for not being able to send more. He thanked her. She was doing her best. He said he'd go to sleep soon. Then he told his friend this would be his last game. He had to start English Academy. He felt guilty every time he read his mother's texts. He'd been living aimlessly for months. Back in his apartment, he doom-scrolled. A short video mentioned people abroad with mysterious powers calling themselves players. He tried clicking, but the video was already gone. Strange. He decided to sleep. The next morning, he was heading to the academy. His friend called again about the clan war. Seowoon relented, saying he'd help one last time. But then, behind him, a purple light flared. He turned, shocked. The light swallowed him whole. His bag dropped to the ground. Nothing remained. Inside the void, Seowoon wondered what the light was. He just resolved to start studying. Was this punishment? He slowly opened his eyes. Voices surrounded him. Russian. He blinked, disoriented, and saw people fighting with swords and magic. He asked himself what he was seeing. Cosplayers. They cast spells with ease. It felt too real. Then he noticed a statue. The statue announced that 100 players had been detected. Seowoon was confused and a bit alarmed. The statue's eyes glowed blue. It said it was initializing the system. The same blue light filled Seowoon's eyes. The language sync began. Suddenly, the Russian voices became Korean. Someone nearby remarked that everyone was speaking his language now. Muram fighters and mages bickered openly. A mage asked another named Chiron why he dragged him here. Chiron retorted, saying he was going to ask the same thing of Escrow. Escrow accused him of being shameless and swore not to fall for his lies. Chiron replied that it didn't matter what he believed, everyone would kneel before the Demon King. Escrow promised, as an archmage, that he'd kill him and defeat the Demon King next. He summoned lightning, Escrow-style lightning, and struck Chiron, but Chiron remained untouched. Escrow was shaken. He insisted Chiron had to be the one responsible. Seowoon watched it all, breathless. This wasn't a dream. The statue spoke again. The game would begin. Difficulty. Easy. Objective. Survive to the top 90. The map. The capital of King Kingdom. Only the top 10 would receive rewards. The tutorial was skipped. No combat allowed in the waiting room. A map materialized in front of Seowoon. The statue addressed first-time players, explaining that the game would last 100 years. Each day, the playable area would shrink. Stepping outside would be dangerous. The game would end when only one remained. Failing to reach the top 90 meant no second chance. They would descend to a chosen location using Argus's gaze. They could gather items and try to climb the ranks. The statue wished them luck. Seowoon wondered aloud if this was a dream inspired by Loyal Ground. The rewards, he saw again, were for top 10 and up. Seowoon stood frozen, drenched in sweat. He muttered that even if all of this was just a dream, being surrounded by a bunch of deranged lunatics wasn't exactly his idea of restful sleep. Just ahead, he spotted a man licking a blade with eyes full of madness. Seowoon silently judged him, an absolute maniac. He came to a grim conclusion. He was definitely going to die here. Still, he admitted that even in a dream, he had no desire to die. And if this whole twisted experience truly mirrored the mechanics of the game. Before he could finish his thought, a voice rang out, calling him, "Messy hair." The man questioned why Seowoon kept glancing around so nervously and asked where he was from. Seowoon didn't respond. The man's blade slashed toward him, demanding to know if he was being ignored. At that moment, the game began its countdown. A grin crept across Seowoon's face. The man scoffed, calling him insane for smiling at a time like this. As the countdown reached 1, Seowoon explained his grin. This dream was way too fun not to enjoy. With his in-depth knowledge of the game, which he referred to as log, he believed he could outmaneuver amateurs like this and survive. Cloyd Survival. Day 1. Without any visible aircraft, players began plummeting from the sky, auras trailing behind them like falling stars. Seowoon took note of a dwarf leering suspiciously. He remarked that everyone seemed to be descending into high traffic zones, where item density would be high. That strategy made sense, but he reasoned it would be safer to start from the outskirts. Spotting a lone house, he decided that it would be a solid place to land and shouted out, "Descend!" He rocketed downwards, screaming the entire way, and ended with an exaggerated superhero landing. Though he wasn't injured, the impact made his stomach churn. He had to fight the urge to vomit, thanks to his intense motion sickness. He told himself that the priority was getting inside the house. Suddenly, rustling came from the nearby brush, causing him to stiffen. He sprinted toward the house, cursing the dizziness for preventing him from identifying who had landed nearby. He burst through the door and slammed it behind him. Bent over and clutching his chest, he muttered that it could be that sword-wielding psycho from earlier and regretted provoking him. He peered through a nearby window and saw nothing. He calmed himself, suggesting it might have just been the wind. The silence reassured him, so he started rummaging through the house for supplies. After all, items were scattered where players landed. He soon noticed something beneath him. A system message appeared. He had acquired a heavy crossbow. He grumbled that it was far too heavy, but acknowledged that it was better than nothing. As he retrieved an arrow from the accompanying quiver and equipped the weapon, the knowledge of how to use it flooded into his mind automatically. He reloaded the weapon confidently, saying that for someone who had served as a sergeant in the Korean army, this was child's play. One squeeze of the trigger, and the crossbow fired, blasting him backward from the recoil as the bolt pierced halfway through the wooden wall. Startled by its power, he admitted it was more effective than expected. With practice, it could be an incredible asset. After checking the rest of the house, he found nothing else, so he made his way to other nearby buildings. He said that as long as he avoided early conflict, he could safely loot and gather resources. Crossbow raised, he crept into the next house, clearing each room carefully. On a table, he spotted a scroll and walked over to investigate. The system confirmed it as a healing scroll, small, but able to fully heal any injuries when torn. He was stunned that such an item existed and said he needed to find more recovery tools. He also wished he had a proper item bag. A nearby bookshelf caught his attention. A purple glowing book stood out among the rest. He pulled it free and read its title, The Black Star Leader's Martial Arts Manual. It taught a technique that allowed the user to project dark energy through their fingers. A prompt asked if he wanted to learn it. He wondered whether some sort of tutorial would follow and selected, yes. The book responded immediately, glowing brilliantly as its pages began to flip rapidly before his eyes. Then, it dissolved into particles and vanished. Staring at his hands, he asked himself if that was it. But soon, he felt energy building inside him, stronger with each second. To test it, he grabbed a nearby fork, infused it with dark energy, and hurled it with full force at the wall. It embedded itself deep into the wood. He grinned, astonished that he had learned a real martial art from just a book. Retrieving the fork, he declared this power was legit. If martial arts books existed, then magical tomes had to be out there too. He was now convinced. Cloyd Survival and Loyal Ground were the same in structure. Having thoroughly looted the area, he decided to relocate. Time passed. He observed that the sun had already begun to rise during his farming session. He needed to find a safe place to hide quickly. In the distance, he saw a house with its lights still on. That could mean one of two things. Either a rare item was hidden inside, or someone was there. He approached cautiously, trying not to make a sound. He admitted that he didn't know how many others had landed in this vicinity. If someone was here, they could either be a total amateur, or an absolute monster. On the first floor, there was no noise. He suspected someone might be on the second and prepared himself. He reasoned that he had a weapon and, with the Black Star technique, he could potentially handle even a strong opponent if he struck first. He ascended the stairs carefully, crossbow in hand. At the top, he saw a lantern resting on the floor, suspiciously placed beside a closed room. He considered it might be bait, but decided to risk it and kicked the door open. The bedroom was empty. He sighed in relief, admitting that he'd just put on a whole dramatic act for no one. On the bedside table, he spotted a ring and picked it up. It was labeled the Ring of Strength, which boosted the wearer's strength by 20 points. He wondered aloud if something that simple could really enhance his abilities and slipped it onto his index finger. Instantly, he felt lighter, his entire body seemed more agile. Even the crossbow, which had been cumbersome before, felt weightless now. He speculated that the stat boost was real and tried to pull up a character window to confirm. After fumbling through command words, the window finally opened. His stats were unimpressive overall, and he theorized that his classification as a martial artist must have come from learning the Black Star technique. Still, compared to where he started, he considered his progress impressive. Back downstairs, he resumed his search. He discovered another item, a subspace ring. The exact thing he had been wishing for. He chuckled about how convenient the rings kept turning out to be. A system message explained that he could store and retrieve items by touching the ring and thinking about the desired object. If the subspace was full, nothing more could be added. He tested it out with the healing scroll and was amazed. It was like having an in-game inventory menu. No need for bulky backpacks. This was far better. He even mused that having such a system in real life would be a game changer. Martial arts and magic would be ridiculously useful back home. Wondering about the current state of the game, he checked the interface for a kill log. Only one player had been eliminated. He planned to loot quietly until only 90 remained, and so far, he'd gathered a decent number of consumables and hidden weapons to supplement his martial arts. Feeling satisfied with his search, he prepared to move again. He decided that staying put until morning might be safest. The real threats, those monstrous players from the waiting room, were probably lurking in the dark, and he knew he couldn't compete with them yet. But if he played smart and stayed hidden, he could claw his way into the top 10 and earn more stat points. Even with the risk, he considered checking one more place before sunrise. If he found something valuable, it would be worth it. As he stepped outside, he noted that, surprisingly, he wasn't tired at all. The Ring of Strength was doing wonders. But even with enhanced stamina, he still felt the nagging pull of hunger and thirst. He figured Cloyd Survival must mirror real life more than expected. He reasoned that there had to be food somewhere nearby, probably in the city. He checked the map, trying to pinpoint a location, but couldn't find any obvious landmarks. Just as he pondered where to go next, a low growl echoed behind him. He froze. A snarl followed, loud and clear. Without thinking, he dove into a nearby bush. He cursed himself for not hearing it sooner. Peeking out, he spotted a creature in the distance, and sweat poured down his face. It was a werewolf, and it wasn't alone. As Seowoon looked up, the werewolf lunged. He dodged just in time, the beast's strike splintering the tree behind him into a rain of bark and shards. Now, two of them were glaring at him, wild-eyed and snarling. He compared the moment to him and his friend after a 48-hour gaming binge. He muttered that he thought this was supposed to be a PvP game and hadn't expected monsters like these to exist. He groaned that if he'd known, he would have just stayed holed up. He was still a ranker, at least in name, and it would be humiliating to die to a low-level mob. Off in the distance, he spotted a house and bolted toward it, eventually slipping inside and slamming the door shut behind him, his chest heaving with every breath. Outside, he could hear them, werewolves circling. He wondered aloud if they would actually come in. As one crept closer, he cracked the door open slightly, spotting it sniffing around. He speculated that it must be tracking him by scent. He made a decision. If it was going to find him, he might as well strike first. He steadied his crossbow through the narrow gap, lined up the shot, and loosed it. The bolt zipped through the air and struck the creature square in the skull. It collapsed and began dissolving into mist. He noted how much easier it was to fire one-handed thanks to the Ring of Strength. But there was still one left. He turned around, and froze. The second werewolf stood directly in front of the doorway. It burst through with brute force, its claw slashing across his cheek. He barely turned in time as it charged in like a deranged mascot smashing through a wall. This was bad. The thing lunged again. Seowoon raised his crossbow and fired. The werewolf blocked with its forearm, nullifying the bolt. He dropped the weapon as the beast closed in for the kill. A split-second decision saved him. He yanked something from subspace. It might have been a spoon, but he didn't hesitate. He imbued it with the Black Star energy and drove it forward, punching a hole straight through the werewolf and embedding it into the wall behind. As the creature began to dissolve, he gasped that there was no way he was losing to some random mob. He dropped to his knees in relief, thanking himself for storing the throwing weapon earlier. Losing to NPCs would have been unbearable. He noticed a small pouch nearby, a mob drop, likely. He opened it and groaned. Just water and jerky. Not the treasure he hoped for, but food was food. As he chewed, he debated whether to explore the area more. Inside the building, he stumbled across a piece of armor. He guessed it was something like a bulletproof vest from Log and slipped it on. It adjusted to his size instantly. The system confirmed it was an advanced orichalcum breastplate, granting high resistance to fire and wind magic. He grinned, saying it boosted more than just 1 or 2 stats. There had to be more loot nearby. While searching, he stubbed his knee on something invisible. Looking down, he found nothing, so he kicked the area and unearthed what felt like fabric. It was a cloak. The system identified it as a night cloak. Once worn, it let the user blend perfectly into darkness. It blocked detection by magic and silenced all sound. He chuckled, comparing it to an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter. With this, survival at night became a real possibility. He was confused about why such a house existed out here in the woods, but realized it must be a designated farming spot. His luck, it seemed, was trending up. Still nighttime, he made his way through the forest, noting that he hadn't encountered anyone for a while. Maybe it was because he landed in a random area. On cue, he heard frantic footsteps behind him. A battered man sprinted through the woods, shouting that he needed just a little more time. Seowoon slipped into the shadows and threw the night cloak over himself, crouching silently in the bushes. The man cursed his luck, shouting that he couldn't believe he ran into a mage. Seowoon observed him quietly, thinking that the man didn't look powerful. If he was right, he could take him down. He reminded himself this wasn't a real person, just another player in a game. He hesitated. Something about attacking him felt wrong. That hesitation vanished when a searing spell, Escrow's Flame, erupted near him, cast by an unseen attacker. The fleeing man took it in the back. Seowoon watched him fall, surprised when a loot chest replaced the body. That confirmed it, this was a game. Still hidden, he wondered where the fire came from. That's when he spotted the source. A sharp-nosed mage muttering that someone like the dead man had no right to steal from him. The mage said the guy should have been thankful to die by fire instead of the sword. Seowoon noted that the cloak had kept him hidden even as the mage walked right past. The mage, now identified as Chiron, examined the loot. Seowoon realized that the man who died had been just like him, a player. And if he stayed passive, he'd be next. If he wanted to survive, hesitation had to go. As Chiron picked through the items, a bolt flew from the darkness, cracking his barrier. Startled, Chiron cursed the earlier commotion and turned, scanning for the attacker. Another bolt struck, another fracture. Frustrated and confused, Chiron demanded that his attacker reveal themselves. He hurled a fireball in the general direction, but it exploded harmlessly. A throwing knife then zipped from the shadows, scraping his barrier again. It shattered completely. Panicked, Chiron cried out again, asking where the coward was hiding. He started casting another spell, Escrow's Flame, but before he could finish, a knife struck his forehead. His final words died on his lips as the blade erased his spell, and his life. Seowoon stared, shocked that he'd actually won. 2 loot chests sat before him. He muttered that someone might have seen the fire, so he had to loot quickly and move. He began with Chiron's chest, dumping everything he could into subspace. Among the items was a healing potion and a necklace labeled Escrow's Necklace, signifying his rank in the Escrow Magic Society. Seowoon called it trash but stashed it anyway. Then he found something special, a circle stone, an item that allowed the engraving of a magic circle. He remembered the dying man's words about not having enough time to use it. Seowoon apologized, saying he'd make it count in the man's place. He packed the rest of the items and moved on. After traveling deeper into the woods, he reached a hilltop and spotted more houses. He decided one looked good enough for safety. Inside, the system asked if he was sure about using the circle stone. He confirmed. The warning was immediate. Using it would immobilize him for 3 hours, prevent item usage, and cause pain during the process. Pain was an understatement. The moment it activated, agony ripped through his chest. He writhed in silence, teeth clenched to stifle the screams. Time dragged. 3 hours of pure torment later, he lay drooling on the floor. He groaned that martial arts had been easy by comparison. Magic was hell. Opening his status window, he discovered he now had 2 jobs. A new stat, mana, was listed. He muttered that since both those players had died, the survivor count must have dropped. He checked the numbers, and went pale. From 100, only 45 remained. One name repeated through the kill log. Nam Sagwang. The man was cutting through players like a man possessed. We flash back a few hours. Atop a tree, a massive man licked his lips as he stared at his next victim. A smaller man stumbling over a rock. As the terrified player begged for mercy, Sagwang extended his hand and crushed his skull with a pop. He didn't even loot the body. He simply whispered that now, everyone would know his name. Day 3 arrived. A notification buzzed. Seowoon expressed disbelief over the death toll. He considered that at this pace, he might actually crack the top 10. The reward for doing so had been teased. What could it be? Money? Rare items? Or perhaps, the power to bring his skills and equipment into the real world? He sighed. There was a killer roaming free, and here he was daydreaming. Still, he admitted he could feel mana awakening inside him. Among yesterday's loot, he remembered finding a magic book of Windball. It created a sphere of compressed wind, and more could be formed with greater power. He eagerly hit yes to learn it. The book vanished instantly, its knowledge sliding into his mind. Holding out his hand, he began to recite the incantation. Mana swirled in his palm, and 4 orbs materialized. They looked weak, until he raised his arm. The wind balls floated back and slammed into the wall behind him, causing a massive explosion. He blinked in awe. They were much stronger than they appeared. But the fatigue hit hard. Using magic was draining. Time passed, and the map updated. The restricted area expanded, shrinking the safe zone. He decided to keep farming near the edge, where player traffic would be lower. With half the players dead, his odds of surviving encounters had improved. He just had to stay quick. Unbeknownst to him, someone watched from the treetops. A silent old man, unmoving, observing his every move. After a while, the man muttered that this was getting interesting and leapt forward. Half a day passed. Seowoon arrived at a familiar spot from the map, expecting houses. Instead, all he saw were bloodstains, and loot boxes littering the ground. Behind him, footsteps echoed. He turned, and panic hit him all over again. He raised his hand and activated Windball, launching it straight toward the source of the sound. The spell detonated on impact, blowing the door to splinters. He stepped forward cautiously, muttering that maybe it had just been the wind, though he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there, watching. But the sight that greeted him through the ruined frame said otherwise. Blood soaked the floor, streaked across the walls. He whispered to himself that whoever was in there had to be injured. If they'd survived this long in that condition, they were either incredibly skilled or incredibly lucky, and that meant they had to have powerful gear. He considered ambushing them and finishing the job quickly. But after a breath, he decided against it. Better to prioritize survival. He backed away, disappearing into the shadows. From inside, a man whispered in disbelief that Seowoon had actually left. He thanked the heavens for his quick thinking. If he'd hesitated for even a moment, he would have died. He admitted he could have taken Seowoon down easily if he weren't injured, but right now, he needed to grab what he could and leave. His thoughts were cut short. An arrow embedded itself into the side of his skull. As his body faded into particles, Seowoon watched calmly from the trees, thanking the man for falling into his trap. He then muttered that he'd loot quickly and head to the edge of the restricted zone. From above, a voice interrupted. The old man from earlier commented that Seowoon seemed quite skilled. Seowoon cursed himself for dropping his guard. The man reassured him not to be alarmed, he merely had a few questions. When Seowoon asked who he was, the old man replied that the answer wouldn't matter. He said they came from different worlds, lived different lives. Seowoon noted that the man was unlike anyone else he had met so far. The old man asked whether he had participated in a play like this before. Seowoon questioned the word play, and the old man explained that he had been watching him since the beginning. He was impressed by how quickly Seowoon had adapted, and he was certain Seowoon already understood that this place wasn't truly real. Seowoon found it unsettling that someone had been watching him all this time without his knowledge. He admitted this was his first time being summoned like this, but that he'd played a similar game in his own world. The old man found that interesting. Seowoon commented that the man's appearance alone made it obvious he wasn't from the same reality. As the sky darkened, the old man pointed out the change, and Seowoon confirmed that it was already the third day. The old man asked whether the moon was always this enormous in Seowoon's world. Seowoon chuckled and replied no. This one was absurdly huge. The old man agreed. He then asked Seowoon to explain this game of his. Seowoon hesitated, pointing out that he could be ambushed in this open space. The old man suggested they relocate somewhere safer. When Seowoon asked how he could trust him not to kill him, the old man simply grabbed him by the arm, whispering that if he didn't want to attract attention, he should stay silent. Then they were off, the old man leaping from tree to tree with terrifying speed. The wind whipped against Seowoon's face so hard it made his cheeks ripple. He admitted silently that, at the time, he had no idea just how much this meeting would change his fate. Elsewhere, under the night sky, their conversation continued. After listening for a while, the old man commented that Seowoon's world sounded incredibly magical. Seowoon clarified that it wasn't magic exactly, it was more like highly advanced civilization. The old man said that would explain how Seowoon had adapted so rapidly. Seowoon asked again how long he had been watched, and the old man confessed it had been since the very beginning. That revelation unsettled Seowoon. He asked whether the old man could read his thoughts. The old man smiled and replied that originally, he intended to spend these 100 days enjoying solitude in the mountains. But Seowoon's actions had caught his attention. He confessed that curiosity, not malice, was why he approached him now. Seowoon admitted that he had no idea why they were brought here. The old man responded that his own world had something similar, though not quite the same. Seowoon explained that in his world, games like this were meant for entertainment. No one really died. So when it came to supernatural entities capable of snatching people from their homes, he had no answers. The old man nodded, then asked what Seowoon meant when he called it a huge opportunity. Seowoon explained that dying here wasn't the same as dying in reality. Based on what he understood, everyone would receive a rank and a reward once eliminated. He believed the rewards would include the items and skills earned during the game. The old man asked whether he meant the gear he had equipped. Seowoon said yes. Gear, martial arts, even magic. Though he admitted he had no solid proof yet. The old man mused aloud that magic certainly was fascinating, but he questioned whether this was truly an opportunity. Seowoon answered that maybe not for someone like him, but for people with nothing, these powers could change lives. The old man asked why he assumed he lived a struggle-free life. Seowoon replied that the man looked like a martial arts master, probably revered in his world. Compared to someone like him, a regular guy with no real role in society, the game held much greater meaning. The old man laughed, loudly, until Seowoon asked him to quiet down. Then he asked what Seowoon kept doing when he tapped the air. Seowoon explained that it was how he opened the map. He shared more tips, and they exchanged stories about their worlds until dawn broke. As light filled the forest, the old man tapped the ground, saying that he had taken too much of Seowoon's time. He set him down gently. Seowoon responded that it had been fine. Honestly, this might be the safest he'd felt in a while. The old man said he had enjoyed their talk, and since Seowoon had taught him so much, he wanted to offer something in return. Seowoon immediately asked if he could learn some of his martial arts. He was determined to survive until the end, and he needed strength to do it. The old man paused, then said that it wasn't impossible. Seowoon's eyes lit up with hope. But the old man added a warning. What he was about to offer came with risk. When asked what kind, the old man said simply, death. Success outside conventional means came at a cost. Seowoon reminded him that no one truly died here. After a moment, the old man nodded. He was right. In that case, the method he had in mind could work. Seowoon asked whether it would make him stronger. The old man said it was certainly worth attempting. First, he needed to measure Seowoon's inner energy. Placing a palm on his head, he closed his eyes. Then he blinked in disbelief. He exclaimed that even his dog had more ki than this. Seowoon apologized, reminding him that martial arts and inner energy didn't exist in his world. The old man told him to assume the lotus position. Still holding his head like a basketball, he warned that what came next would feel like dying, but that Seowoon wouldn't be able to move. Seowoon asked what he should do. The answer: endure. As the old man transferred his ki, Seowoon's senses exploded. The wind slicing across his skin felt like knives. Every breath felt like poison. He could hear ants crawling through the grass. Then the pain hit, sharp, blazing, and climbing from his lower dantian to his upper one. He screamed. Energy burst from his mouth and eyes as his whole body broke into a sweat. Time froze. Something foreign embedded itself in him. Then it ended. The old man stepped back and said it was done. Seowoon doubled over and vomited. The old man watched and said that Seowoon had endured it better than expected. His body had potential. Once his ki flow adjusted, he would feel completely transformed. Seowoon asked what was next. The old man reminded him that he wanted strength fast. He explained that he had nudged Seowoon's soul aside and created a special internal gate. Normally, people absorbed the world's ki through breathing. But now, Seowoon had another channel. One that could take in special forms of energy. When Seowoon asked what changed, the old man said that humans were composed of mind, body, and soul, all held together by life ki. When someone died, Seowoon guessed the life ki disappeared. The old man corrected him. It didn't vanish, it dispersed, like water off a leaf. He explained that this dispersed life ki got absorbed by nature, continuing the cycle. But some rejected that cycle. They murdered to absorb the ki themselves. Those who did eventually lost balance and died in agony. The technique he had given Seowoon allowed him to absorb this life ki in a stable way, thanks to his blank slate of a body. Seowoon asked if he'd just been handed a death sentence. The old man said no, because unlike others, Seowoon hadn't forcibly reconstructed his body. Instead, his soul had been used to form the gate. He could absorb life ki without shattering his balance. This, the old man said, was a forbidden technique in Zhongyuan, the white martial physique arts. He had passed it to Seowoon because of the game setting. Here, death was temporary. And where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. By absorbing life ki from the dead, Seowoon could grow exponentially. And by the end of these 100 days, he would be far more powerful. It was time to part ways. Seowoon stopped him. He said the old man had helped him so much, he at least wanted to know his name. The old man smiled and replied, Jongdokian. He said people called him Deep Valley. Seowoon bowed deeply, his voice steady as he said he would never forget what he had been given. The old man responded by telling him to get accustomed to breathing with intent. If he continued to build his inner energy through his dantian, he would grow stronger, slowly, but surely. With practiced ease, the old man opened the map interface, nodding that it was a convenient trick. He added that they'd meet again when fate allowed. Seowoon affirmed it, watching in awe as the man vanished into the sky in a single effortless leap. He muttered that his speed was unreal, just what he expected from someone like that. If only he could master those Kwangong movement techniques, he mused, navigating this place would be a breeze. With that thought, he turned and began the long trek back to the outskirts as planned. Though he had been yanked to the center of the map in an instant, the journey back on foot took him half a day. By the time he arrived, he crouched in the bushes in front of a house with lights still on. He whispered to himself that it felt just like before. Either the house was empty, or some clueless rookie hadn't bothered to turn off the lights. Either way, he was going in. He sprinted across the clearing and slipped inside, quickly sweeping through the lower floor with practiced caution. The light upstairs flickered off as he moved, confirming his suspicion. He muttered that he was right, and now it was time to farm some loot. But time passed, and frustration settled in. He muttered that the house was a waste of time. Nothing useful, just a basic healing scroll and a pouch of dried jerky. Disappointed, he yawned and admitted that he hadn't gotten a single minute of sleep last night. After talking to the elder for hours, exhaustion hit him hard. He mumbled that he was done for now, and finally let himself crash to the floor and doze off. Day 5 arrived. He was still sprawled on the ground, deep in sleep, when footsteps approached the house. A voice rang out, noting that the place didn't seem abandoned. The words stirred Seowoon from his sleep. His eyes shot open, and he realized someone was just outside the door. Silently, he reached for his crossbow. He cursed under his breath. He'd let himself fall asleep like a fool. He crouched by the door, breathing slowly, trying to steady his heart. The door creaked open. A man stepped inside, exhaling with relief and saying that he could finally rest. But his face froze in shock as he came face to face with the point of a loaded crossbow. Without hesitation, Seowoon pulled the trigger. The bolt screamed through the air, but the man reacted fast, slicing it out of the air with a flash of his sword. Seowoon's eyes widened. He was up against a martial artist. He hissed that this was going to be a pain, then reached into his subspace and retrieved a pair of throwing knives. As he imbued them with the Black Star technique, he hurled them forward. The man blocked one with his arm and snarled that only cowards relied on hidden weapons. Seowoon didn't respond. He closed the distance fast, grabbing the man's head with one hand and slamming him down onto the wooden floor. The impact shook the room. He kicked the sword away, muttering that he had been having a good dream, until this guy ruined it. Raising a bolt like a dagger, he prepared to end it. The man panicked, throwing his hands up and begging. He said he'd do anything, give up anything, as long as he didn't have to die here. He pleaded, saying that he had struggled so much to get this far. But Seowoon's hand didn't waver. The bolt plunged into his forehead with a solid thud. The system chimed. Name. Oh, wrong. Cause of death, arrowhead shot. Seowoon stood over the fading body and muttered that he refused to die here either. Seowoon moved without pause. Transmigrated into a world ruled by death and instinct, he adapted quickly. Each decision was sharp, deliberate. As the dust settled, he noticed something, green light drifting where his enemy had just fallen. The man's body was gone, replaced by a glowing chest. Seowoon immediately recognized it. The energy Elder Jang Dokian had described, the essence left behind after death. The faint wisps moved toward him, curling around his fingers, then seeping into his skin. Warmth flooded him. Then, flash. The chest burst with radiant light, engulfing him in a wave of raw force. He stood still, tense, until the glow faded. He looked at his hands. They trembled slightly, pulsing with unfamiliar strength. One death, one soul claimed, and yet, it felt like his body had changed completely. Calling up the system, he checked his stats. Internal energy, 20. The power had taken measurable form. He wondered if it was all the man had, or if only part had transferred. Either way, Elder Jang's teachings were no longer theory. The key wasn't just surviving, it was claiming what others left behind. Opening the survivor log, he spotted something new. The number had dropped, 24 to 23. Nam Segwan had killed Karl Verstappen. Far from Seowoon's position, Karl bled out on the dirt, guts torn open, breath slipping away. He muttered Nam Segwan's name as life left him. His body dissolved, leaving behind a glowing chest and a ripple of blue light. Nam Segwan barely acknowledged it. Blood still fresh on his hands, he scoffed. He'd expected more. Karl had struck first, but there'd been no real fight. Just another lifeless kill. Another log. He dismissed the chest and raised his eyes to the interface. Survivors remaining, 22. He exhaled, irritated that so many still lived. Then, his gaze caught on a name. Seowoon. A glint sparked behind his blood-smeared face. Interest, maybe recognition. He said the name aloud, slowly. Back in a dim shelter, Seowoon saw it too. Nam Segwan. That name burned into the screen, into his thoughts. Of every killer in the logs, that one chilled him. If the man he had just beaten had nearly finished him, what chance did he have against the one cutting down champions? He opened the chest. Just a single refined troll potion. If that man had carried better gear, the fight might have ended differently. Seowoon didn't need more fights. He needed to live. So he moved to the map's edge, staying in the shadows. While the others clashed, he'd bide his time. A week passed. In the forest, red eyes glowed. A beast lunged. But Seowoon was ready. The crossbow fired, and the creature exploded in light. Dinner, he noted dryly. He kept moving, careful and quiet. No players crossed his path. He had become a ghost, avoiding the chaos. Then, on day 12, a notification flickered. He stood at the edge of the hexagonal barrier. Pressing his palm to it, a cold numbness crept over his arm. If he stepped through, he might not be able to move again. His thoughts snapped to Nam Segwan. No new deaths. The kill logs had gone quiet, only Nam Segwan remained active. He was hunting, and no one dared move. Then Seowoon spotted smoke in the distance. He approached low and slow, crawling through the brush. What he found stopped him cold. Nam Segwan stood alone, surrounded by a circle of powerful players. Their weapons were drawn. One of them announced that this was the end. They had come to kill him. Nam Seowoon chuckled. He said their arrival saved him the trouble of tracking them down. With no fear in his eyes, he promised blood for blood. Then came the eruption. His aura exploded, cracking the ground. The force alone made some flinch, others brace. A moment later, he dropped like a meteor into their ranks. His first strike crushed a man's skull in a single blow. Blue energy exploded outward. Silence followed, stunned, horrified silence. Then chaos. Nam Seowoon moved through them like a blade through silk. His attacks weren't flashy. They were final. One slash, one death. Limbs flew. Bodies dropped. The air filled with screams and sparks. There was no fight, no rhythm, just carnage. One fighter tried to retaliate. He died instantly. Another fell next, cleaved in two. The kill log lit up, Nam Seowoon again and again. Seowoon watched, frozen. This wasn't competition, it was annihilation. And then it was over. Nam Seowoon stood alone in a field of broken bodies and flickering loot chests. Blood coated his face. His breathing was steady. He muttered that they were all nobodies, annoying insects. He wiped the blood from his skin with bored precision, turned, and vanished into the night. Only the items remained. Among them, a faintly glowing staff buried in the dirt. Mist curled as a figure stepped into the clearing. Robes swept through the grass. The newcomer paused at the staff, recognizing it instantly. It had belonged to Elizabeth. The figure whispered her name, voice trembling, not with grief, but fury. A vow followed. Not loud, but full of weight. Revenge. Under the silver veil of moonlight, a man raised his gaze and swore on the name of Escrow. Elsewhere, beneath the same sky, Seowoon stood still in the forest, haunted by a single thought. Only 11 survivors remained. If he could hold out a little longer, the top 10 was within reach. But after witnessing Nam Seowoon's rampage, that hope was dimming. Facing a monster like him would take more than willpower. It would take a miracle. His gaze drifted to a castle in the distance. Its silhouette loomed, imposing and regal. He reasoned that with the restricted zone said to shift by morning, this might be his last shot to find something that could tip the balance. He moved quickly, slipping through the outer gardens and into the grand mansion. Inside, moonlight spilled through stained glass windows, casting vivid colors across marble floors. Towering pillars and statues greeted him in silence. A sense of reverence lingered. At the base of the staircase, his eyes locked onto a suit of Royal Guard armor. A system prompt appeared. The armor required far more strength than he had. With only 30 strength, it was useless, just dead weight. He moved on. Wandering deeper into the halls, his patience was rewarded. A faint glimmer on a high shelf drew his eye. He reached for it, revealing a glowing vial. A system prompt labeled it Elixir of Insight, a rare potion that increased internal energy. He clutched it with awe. Further inside, another treasure awaited, a glowing martial arts manual resting on a pedestal. Secrets of the Unbreakable Fist. The mansion was filled with power. Seowoon could hardly believe it. For once, luck was on his side. Then he spotted something off, a rug slightly out of place. Pulling it back, he saw a hidden hatch. But before he could react, an explosion erupted beneath him. Fire and shrapnel tore through the corridor. The heat knocked the air from his lungs as he was hurled backward. A second blast followed, slamming him even farther, his body twisting midair. Smoke and panic clouded his senses. Instinct took over. He scrambled outside and threw himself into a patch of bushes, heart hammering. Gasping, he peeked through the branches. Flames licked at the castle, and through the haze, a figure emerged. Long blonde hair swayed. An ornate staff pulsed with lingering energy. Escrow stood at the edge of the blast zone, untouched. Across the scorched earth, Nam Seowoon stepped forward, fire reflecting in his eyes. The tension between them was immediate, palpable. Escrow mocked him for dodging, voice dripping with venom. Nam Seowoon smirked, calling him out with biting sarcasm. Seowoon, frozen in the underbrush, barely breathed. The weight of their presence was crushing. These were not just players, they were forces of nature. Escrow's staff rose, his voice thundered with arcane power. Storm clouds gathered instantly. Lightning crackled above, and with a roar, a bolt descended. Nam Seowoon had already moved. The bolt exploded into stone, ripping the ground apart. Escrow snarled, asking how long his opponent planned to dance around him. He shouted Elizabeth's name, demanding a real fight. Nam Seowoon crouched low, fire curling at his heels. He didn't respond. His silence said more than words ever could. Crow called him a coward, then summoned another storm. He declared this was the end, he would finish it here. Light wrapped around him as he ascended, lightning coiling like a crown. The sky split open. Power raged down from above. Nam Seowoon flinched, just for a second. The force of the spell staggered even him. But instinct prevailed. He dove clear, the bolt obliterating the stone behind him. He rolled and ran, weaving through strikes that ripped the sky apart. Lightning grazed his side. Craters formed in his wake. His movement was relentless, fluid, unyielding. And then he surged forward. Instead of escaping, Nam Seowoon charged directly into the storm. Each bolt he dodged brought him closer. His body blurred through the chaos, wrapped in sheer force and precision. The battlefield lit up with every strike, but none stopped him. He climbed higher, cutting through the heart of the tempest. Power crackled around him. A counterstrike was coming. Crow's eyes widened in disbelief as Nam Seowoon ascended, not through the chaos, but through the very storm he had summoned. The blue energy crackling along Nam Seowoon's arms signaled his next move. His gaze locked on Crow, and power surged toward his hand. Crow struck first, swinging his staff with fury, demanding his foe fall. But his blow passed through nothing, an illusion. Startled, Crow steadied himself mid-air, realizing he'd been fooled. Hidden above, Seowoon watched the confrontation unfold, tension coiled in his chest. But the battle shifted unexpectedly. Rain began to fall. Crow hovered in the downpour, searching. Nothing. Nam Seowoon had vanished without a trace. A hollow silence followed. Then Crow's composure broke. He screamed Nam Seowoon's name into the storm, vowing to hunt him down no matter the distance. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Nam Seowoon ran. Wounded, soaked, and burning with anger. The mage had caught him off guard. Next time would be different. Next time, Nam Seowoon promised, he would end Crow himself. But for now, survival came first. He disappeared into the dark, rain-drenched woods. Crow descended, scanned the ruins one last time, then vanished. In the bushes, Seowoon remained motionless, cloaked in invisibility. His key to survival. With both monsters gone, the danger passed. Through the thinning rain, his eyes found the hatch. He approached it carefully, uncovering a stone staircase winding deep into the earth. Lantern in hand, he descended, the flickering light carving a path through the dark. At the bottom, the silence was absolute. The chamber revealed nothing sinister, just storage racks, hooks, and crates. It was a food warehouse. Relief washed over him. In a brutal world, a stash of untouched provisions was a rare gift. An hour later, Seowoon lay on the ground, stomach full for the first time in days. He muttered that some white rice would have been perfect, but even without it, he felt human again. Rested and alone, he pulled out the book of the Unbreakable Fist and the Elixir of Insight. A system prompt revealed the book's absurd history. Its creator had fought 1,429 battles, winning and losing each in equal measure. The style left no legacy, no students, only ridicule. Seowoon chuckled. Of course this was the manual he'd found. Still, he opened it. Gentle light washed over the walls as he chose to learn it, even if practicing it would come later. Next was the elixir. He hesitated, remembering the pain from the circle stone. But strength didn't come without cost. He drank. Instantly, energy exploded from his core. Brilliant blue mana surged through him, richer and deeper than anything he'd felt before. Then came the backlash. His limbs stiffened. Muscles locked. He collapsed, paralyzed. 3 hours of agony followed. Sweat poured down his face as he lay helpless, each breath labored. His joints screamed. Even staying still became its own torture. But he survived. Somehow, he endured. As exhaustion took over, he allowed himself to sleep. Morning came with a system chime. Day 13. The warehouse door creaked open. Sunlight streamed in. Seowoon stepped out, cloak adjusted, crossbow ready. He was inside the restricted zone now. He summoned the survivor list and scanned it. One name had vanished. Jang Dokian. He froze. The old master was dead. Seowoon tried to rationalize it. Maybe an experiment gone wrong. Some extreme training taken too far. Either way, the loss cut deep. The map shrank again. Tension rose. He couldn't falter now. Survival demanded he stay ahead of the zone and out of sight. Stealth was his only edge. He moved quickly through the forest, hyper-aware of every sound. Then, a flash. The world ahead exploded in fire. A blast engulfed the path, heat rippling outward. Seowoon dove aside, barely escaping. Dazed, he struggled upright, breath ragged. Only one person could have cast something that devastating. Escrow. The mage emerged through smoke and ruin, scanning the area. Seowoon grit his teeth. He'd grown complacent after gaining power. Escrow spotted him. The mage asked if he knew where Nam Sagwan was. Seowoon said nothing. Behind a tree, Nam Sagwan listened in silence, hidden. Escrow raised his staff, voice calm but cold. If Seowoon was useless, he had no reason to spare him. From the shadows, Nam Sagwan smirked. Watching them both, amused.